finally. Okay. All right, I would like to call to order the meeting of the St. Mary's County Board of Education for Wednesday, February 21st, 2018. We will begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda with the addition of an executive session to follow this meeting.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, and our main purpose today is to approve the recommended budget for fiscal year 2019. So we have Ms. McCourt and Dr. Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you all began this budget process with receiving of the superintendent's budget on January 10th, followed by the budget work session on January 31st, followed by a public hearing on February 12th, and then another budget work session taking into consideration the comments from the citizens, teachers, parents, and formal students on the 12th. That following work session was on the 14th, at which time you gave us additional direction for your budget. So I'd like to review some of the highlights that we've covered in the past, and that is investment in our people, step increases are included, as well as healthcare changes, special education positions conversion from 10 months to 11 months, 2 unrestricted and 2 restricted positions, a nurse position converted from 10 to 11 months, 1.5 charter school positions, 4 restricted funded positions, 2 restricted funded parent educator positions. In support for our students, we have the High Roads program, college and career readiness software, and sustaining our system, we have bus contracts, timekeeping software, and non-recurring funding request for technology refresh, textbooks, for social studies, classroom furniture, and replacement vehicles. We've added the following to the budget per your request: the JRTC instructor, 2 guidance counselors, 1 safety and security assistant, 3 building service workers, 1 floating school secretary mentor, 1 human resources and workforce diversity coordinator, 1 webmaster position, evening high school, and the nurse professional development. And if I could pause for just a moment, Mrs. Washington asked where these positions could be found in the budget. So if I can refer you to this budget document, specifically page 23, they are, each of the categories are listed as well as the FTEs per category. Within administration category, you'll see an increase of 1.37 positions, and that is 0.37 position that is funded by the unrestricted fund for the human resources diversity coordinator. The other remaining component of that position is under the restricted fund, and the 1 secretary mentor position is also in the administration category. Within the mid-level administration category, there's an increase of 1 FTE there for the webmaster position. Within the instructional salaries and wages category, there's an increase of 4.5, and that is for the JRTC position as well as the charter school position of 1.5 and the 2 guidance counselor positions. The other increases are in operation of plant, 4 FTEs, 1 for the safety and security officer assistant, and 3 for the building service workers. So for a total increase in FTEs to the unrestricted fund of 10.87.
Okay.
Moving on to the revenue side, this proposed budget includes $104.2 million in local funds, which is an increase of $2 million or a 2% increase. And as you recall, this was part of the 5-year projection from the county government as they ended their FY18 budget work sessions in May of 2017. It does include the request of local fund balance for non-recurring costs of $1.9 million. It includes $1.4 million in additional state funding, $205,000 in additional federal funding, and $218,000 in other funding sources, for a total bottom line increase of $5.8 million, or 2.76%. On the expenditure side, we're showing each of the categories increases in recurring and non-recurring costs. The total recurring budget is $3.8 million. And I'd like to point out that the total recurring budget reflects a 1.85% increase in recurring funding. The non-recurring funding is in the areas of mid-level administration, textbooks and instructional supplies, and operation of plant. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Walker up to the table to address CIP briefly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This document that you approved today includes the capital improvements program. We've been working through the process with the state, and as you recall, there are various levels of funding decisions that are made over the course of the year for this process. In November, 75% of the capital funding is recommended. In December, January, they go up to 90%, and then sometime late January, February, they make 100% recommendations for all the funding. So last year, if you remember, last year was unique. We had requested a little over $800,000 total from the state, and in November we received notification that for the FY18 CIP, we were 100% funded. This year is different. We requested more, and we were part of that gradual funding process. However, we received notification recently that the primary recommendation the Interagency Committee on School Construction is making to the Board of Public Works includes 100% funding for all 4 of our state requested projects. So these are the numbers that we discussed way back in September with both you and the county commissioners. There have been various notifications that we did not receive funding for certain projects, particularly the Green Holly and Great Mills High School projects. Then we got partial funding for Great Mills and full funding for Green Holly as a recommendation. Well, now their option A that they're recommending to the Board of Public Works includes full funding for all 4 of these projects, including Green Holly and Great Mills.
Which is a really, really positive thing to have 100% full funding 2 years in a row says that the IAC definitely feels as though we are putting forth projects that are appropriate for the sustainability of the school system.
Yes, sir, and I think it means also that when they have money that they have not decided how to allocate, and they look around the state, we have a history of doing good work with our money, getting projects done on time, and using the money for important projects that maintain our buildings and keep them functioning for a long period of time. So,
A really
again,
good investment.
yes, sir. There are various levels of funding that the commissioners have seen, and so we did inform them at a recent work session that some of these options were on the table. So when it's approved here, we'll go back with these numbers. And we'll receive notification on the 26th or 27th before the next commissioners' work session at what level these are approved if they're not 100%.
But going forward and being communicated over when we do send the budget, the full budget document, including the CIP plan, by March 1st, will include the expectation that these are fully funded by the state, which then would require the match by the county commissioners within their CIP.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, I just want to ask one question. So on the far right column, the fiscal year 19 local share, that's already been loaded into their CIP plan for the county commissioner's budget, correct?
It was originally loaded that way. However, the county receives the same letters we get from the Board of Public Works and the Public School Construction Program about where they are in their recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So when they get a letter recently, when they've gotten letters that say Green Holly is not funded, we're still in the appeal process, it was reduced. The Great Mills is not funded, their capital projects were adjusted over there in their budget. However, they are aware of the fact that there's a continuing appeal process typically through the Board of Public Works meeting in January, But even beyond this year, because the timeline is slightly delayed because of the new director at the public school construction program, some changes that they're making. So it's been a little bit later, but at no point did we ever say that we were done asking for the projects,
Right.
money for the projects that we had requested. And we've continued to communicate that to the county.
And so if the state comes back and awards us the full 859 and 1.7 for Green Holly and Great Mills, and if the county doesn't ante up their portion, then does our state portion go away as well then?
Well, it's in jeopardy. It would be in jeopardy. There are some, I mean, obviously, the state, if the state puts their share, they expect the county to put their share.
Okay.
And these are the projects the commissioners agreed to fund in September when they approved our CIP.
Right.
However, there may be some flexibility we can talk to the commissioners about how much goes in 19 and how much could go into 20. These are roof projects, and if we get approved for FY19, the money's available on July 1st, but typically for a roof project, that doesn't give us enough time
Right,
to
so
do
it
the
would be
roof
the
that
next
summer.
year anyway.
We plan over that year and do the roof the following summer. So if the county decided to allocate some in FY19 and some in FY20, that's probably a workable solution for the state, and it would
Okay.
definitely work for us.
Okay. All right, good. Mrs. Allen?
That's good to know, especially given the concerns that the legislature may pass some form of a bill coming out of the Knott Commission with respect to the Facilities Condition Index, wherein they will look at every single school within the state, select the worst or the most in need, and that all of the resources will then go to those schools. And I'm concerned that that will mean that while we've been proactive about addressing our building needs over time, that we will be put in a position where it will be a long time before we get any state funding for any capital projects. And I think
Possible.
that's
The other consideration is the state local cost share. And if these
Correct.
projects aren't funded in fiscal year 19, it could be that the county's share increases for future years. So if we
Right.
lock them in fiscal year 19, they're funded at the current level, which has the state paying a little bit more than they will in future years.
I think it's incumbent upon us to have conversations with our commissioners so that they fully appreciate exactly the benefits and the risks.
Yes,
Thank you.
Dr. Walker,
yes.
the estimates for fiscal 19, 2019, for example, the partial roof is $1,733,000. Is that number based on your estimate of the cost?
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay, so it
Based on
could be
previous
different
proj-
in a hard bid, for example.
Right. No, it's not. It's an estimate.
Okay. That's kind of what I assumed, but.
Yes, sir. Ms. Howell's usually pretty good. She works with Mr. Hartwick and Mr. Whidden to get a good number prepped for the year that we will do construction. So the number here it takes into account when we would actually start the project too.
Okay.
I have nothing.
I have a question on the evening high school. I know at the tail end of the work session that we had on the 14th, we discussed the evening high school amount was $286,000 for the total and the fixed charges. But I don't know where in the budget we have any money for the sub sick leave. So I know we were having the discussion is to use the 286 for the sick leave payments for the substitutes, and then go to Mrs. Allen's suggestion at the first work session of looking at evening high school in the start of next year after the first quarter ends, and then determining what the need was and what money we had available for it.
Yeah.
So that would be the only change that I would throw out there to propose, because since we had that work session, the sub payment, or whatever we're calling it, sick
Right.
leave for subs, is
Right.
now law.
Yeah.
So it's not something that we can avoid or expect to not, to wait to have to pay until July 1st.
So we did include $118,000
Okay,
and that would be on your changes sheet.
Right, I saw
At the
that.
very bottom.
Yes.
We did include the entire amount for the evening high school. Unfortunately, they're both within the same category, so we have the flexibility to move monies from one line to the next.
Okay.
And although we estimated the cost for the sick leave to be $230,000, that was based on our prior history of the hours that were actually worked. So that would be based on the accrued sick leave available to those substitute teachers, hourly and temporary hires. However, they wouldn't necessarily all use it at 100%.
Okay. All right,
So I guess with that being said, I would be very comfortable in starting off the year with the $118,000, with the understanding that there's definitely wiggle room between the budget set aside for the evening high school as well, if necessary, because it's all within the same category.
Okay, and then, all right, and then the only other thing I'm gonna throw out there is just based on the, and I'm just approaching this from a sheer dollar amount of to what the evening high school costs us to run. Is it more beneficial to, let's say, take those funds and even though I know it'll explode the county commissioners to add yet another FTE, but add another guidance counselor or add another school psychologist or something with that section of money to assist perhaps our middle school population, targeting them directly as opposed to putting the money toward evening high school.
So if I could you go back one slide to the, where it gives a recurring and non-recurring? One more, there you go, okay. So, and my eyes fail me, the recurring $3.8 million,
Right.
okay? It's an important number because it is indeed less than 2% of the overall operating budget of the school system.
Which is what we committed to.
And which is what we committed to, which is what we have discussed, which is what we've talked about as far as, you know, as long as we're funded at least 2% over what we had the previous year recurring, we'll be able to maintain the school system, we'll be able to maintain and fully fund our negotiated agreements, and we'll be able to move forward. We won't necessarily be able to grow programs and FTEs, but we will be able to maintain with that 2%. The flexibility that evening high school and the way it is structured out and the way that it isn't an FTE, that gives us greater flexibility for the conversation, because this is the conversation that we're having in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And if we aren't afforded the 2% that we were originally working from, we're gonna be at quite the deficit in 2020.
Correct.
And I just, you know, I don't want to be entering into an understanding where we're adding more and more recurring costs without a guarantee that we are gonna be funded in a recurring
Right.
fashion.
That's fair. I just wanted to throw that out there, just based on,
I think
What
we're
we've
making
seen.
a start at it by adding 2 additional counselors
Yeah.
and a safety and security
I
person.
agree.
So it's not what I think any of us would like, but I think the reality is this is the best way to go forward, and then we'll see where we go from here.
Now, I would like to bring up some comments that I stated a week ago. And I know that, Ms. Allen, you know, everybody brought up some thoughts on, basically our 2%, on where we're coming from. To reiterate, Governor Hogan is basing the state's budget on a 5.3% increase in revenue, but yet our county commissioners are basing theirs off of a less than 1%. Let me quote just here in the County Times that the Morgan said the county's immediate future was strong as it continued to grow. So, I mean, we're getting very mixed messages. Is the county growing? Is it not growing? And they stated they were gonna flat fund for the next 5 years. And Ms. Bailey brought up, her daughter will have graduated and nothing will be new by that time, or it will be the services and whatever's in the school might have even decreased. I did ask Ms. Bailey, you know, the question, where are they coming up with their budget analysis? They're less than 1%. Ms. Bailey did send
I did.
a letter to Dr. Bridget and to President Randy Guy, and asked the questions that I had asked during our meeting, our open meeting on Wednesday, the February 14th. Because if they're basing their projections off of whatever it is, I would like to see it. I'm a taxpayer. I believe that everyone that is in the county, it should be open and transparent to everyone. And we have not received an answer at this time.
I'll refresh my email.
Refresh,
I'll
maybe
refresh
it'll
my
come in
email.
right now, but.
But I did tell them that we would approve the budget this morning, and I have not heard anything. I have not even had a response that they even acknowledged receipt of my email.
So that is really, they knew when they went for their bond that it was based, their bond rating was based, a lot of it was based off of our agreement with the East Easement and SMASA. So they got a good bond rating. They knew that what we had requested with the 2% increase, and yet they're coming back and stating that they're going to flat fund. I asked for the documentation to show where they're coming from. We have not received it. Maybe there is some, but we don't know that. So those are my thoughts. And that's why I really think it's important to go through with what we're doing with the increase.
Mr. McCourt, the guidance counselors, you have two, does this mean we have 5 now? Or do we just have 2 counselors?
No, we're adding 2 more.
You're adding 2 more,
We're adding
so
2
we
more.
have 5.
we have more than
way
5.
more than 5.
Okay.
No, the two, so currently at Spring Ridge and Leonardtown Middle School, there are 3 school counselors.
Right.
At Esperanza and Margaret Brent, there are only 2. So if you add the 2 additional, it'll round out to be 3 counselors, school counselors at all 3 of our middle schools. Just as a point of reference, all 3 of our middle schools, 3 of our schools are at about 1,000, and Esperanza is increasing. It's over 800 and something students, 850 something.
And we
students.
currently have 45 counselors system-wide, and so this will increase it to 47.
47.
Okay. I guess my comment about guidance counselors, that we all are aware of what happened at Parkland, Sandy Hook, and Virginia Tech. And it just seems that we're trying to do a good job in securing our schools, and I think we need to do that. But I'm a strong advocate of having as many guidance counselors, trained psychologists in our school system, because what's happening is a lot of these troubled kids and adults are falling through the cracks. So I just wanted to make a comment that I support the guidance counselors. I think we need more to do what we can to identify kids that have got special problems, and that they can get find and seek the proper help and guidance to help these kids so they don't turn into these monsters. I don't know if that is the answer, but it seems to me that when you're looking at security, you're looking at horses that have gone out of the barn, and you're trying to protect our students from people that have aberrant behavior. Where I'm coming from with the counseling is before the horse leaves the barn, see what we can do to help these children. Because it's, I think one teacher was quoted as saying we have, it's hard for a lot of young men growing up in today's world. And I'm not picking on just boys, but I just feel that money is well spent in trained psychologists. The more we can get, the better. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything, just to recap? When we signed the negotiated agreement 3 years ago, we were very clear with the county commissioners what our needs were on a recurring basis for the next 4 years. We've stayed within that dollar amount and within that percentage amount, right? Everyone's in agreement on that.
Yes.
Everyone understands that. Okay. So, Tammy, I thank you and your staff. I know there was a lot of moving parts because we're never sure when you first present it to us in January what the state funding will be. We had the RFP out for the healthcare, so that was kind of, to use my accounting term, a plug number until the RFP was accepted and finalized by both us and the county commissioners.
Yeah.
And now that number is hard and fast and built into this budget. So,
Right. That is important to note that when we originally built the budget, we anticipated a minimal increase to healthcare costs of about
$1.5 million, a 5% increase.
5% increase as a placeholder.
correct.
But then I have to say, a testament to all the fiscal services under Ms. McCord's direction, as well as Jeanette Cudmore and Kathy Pratzen over at with county government, to put out an RFP to see if we can negotiate a better deal for our employees, making sure that there's no diminished service and for our staff, and comes back and instead of a $1.5 million cost as it settles out, it's
About a $900,000 cost.
about a $900,000 cost. So that's we've done well with that. So I do really appreciate the work that's happening, and that is actively built into the budget totals that we have.
Right.
We did not maintain that 1.5. We modified it to reflect actuals.
Right. Well, and we discussed that at the work session on the 14th after we had seen the RFP.
Right. So our budget reflects actual numbers.
Okay. All right. Any more discussion?
No.
All right. With that, may I have a motion for this recommended action item?
I move approval of the, one moment, sorry. I move approval of the recommended budget for FY 2019 as presented and to be forwarded to the Commissioners of St. Mary's County for their review and approval.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right. Our part is completed right now. All right, we are gonna move into executive session, but I'm just gonna, a quick reminder, everyone, our next board meeting is next Wednesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. And may I now have a motion to move into executive session?
I move the board enter into executive session for the purpose of student issues under Maryland Local Government Article Section 9-512A, number 10, and administrative function items under Maryland General Provisions Article Section 3-104.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.